Hello, Digital Studies students. It's week 3 of the summer 2023 term, and I'm doing a video today because I feel like there's a lot going on this week that I'd like a chance to explain, and I didn't do a great job of introducing things just textually yesterday. I did do a live stream yesterday, but it didn't go super well in terms of what I hoped I would be able to talk about on the live stream. So I'm going to do kind of a lecture today. I'm going to talk through several points. I've got some music going in the background, so hopefully it's not too loud. I'm actually using that to cover up. Both of my neighbors are doing some kind of construction work at their house, so there are tile saws on both sides of me today, so I don't know what's going on there. So hopefully that the music will kind of drown out any background noise, and be able to talk about some things. So here we are. It's week 3, day 2, and like I said, kind of some slides here to talk through. I've also got some things I'm going to pull up in the browser just to kind of make sure you're getting oriented in terms of what we're doing this week, and I wanted a chance to explain it. And I'm calling this week the material side of digital culture, and that's because most of what we do and think about online is something else other than material. It's something that, it's another fancy word here, ephemeral. It's the kind of thing that we think of as drifting away off into the clouds when we're done with it. In fact, that's not true about a lot of digital stuff. There are traces of it, but we tend to think of it as ephemeral anyway. But for this project, we're interested in something else. We're interested in the material side. And the material side of digital technology is something that we usually only think about or interact with or really, get frustrated by whenever it breaks, whenever something's wrong with it, or when we stop using it, when we have to buy a new one. Most of the time we think of our digital devices as just a transparent window into the ether, into the ephemeral. But there's quite a lot more to it, as I hope you discovered and learned a little bit about by playing the phone story game yesterday. So this week you're going to be completing a project that asks you to look at and learn about a particular object, a particular piece of digital technology. So the major assignment this week, there's just the one. There's no modules or anything this week. It's just the one thing, which is the object lesson. It's kind of complicated, so that's all there is, and I'm using this video to explain it, hopefully. Your first step is going to be, in completing this assignment, your first step is going to be choosing an object to learn about, to tell the story of. And just to be clear, this is the hard part in some cases, kind of explaining this. The idea is that you're trying to learn about not a category of objects, not even a particular model, but a particular one. You're learning on a particular exact item. Let me show you an example. So, oh gosh. Okay. Should have pulled this up here before I started recording. So the Atari 2600, as you may know, is a old video game console made in 1977 and very popular. They kept making them up to the 1990s, very popular. If I was interested in talking about the Atari 2600 as my electronic device for the object lesson assignment, I would be trying to learn about not the Atari as something that was created in 1977, has various editions, but rather this one, this exact one. This is the one that I would try to find out everything I can about. So this one I can tell was made in 1985 because of the date on the back of it, so I'd be trying to learn about this one. I also know a bit about this particular one. This one used to belong to my colleague Chris Foss. So those are the kinds of specific individual details that are only true for this Atari 2600. That's how I would approach this assignment if I were going to use this one. In fact, well, okay, I don't have the right screwdrivers for it to open it up right now. One way you can approach this, by the way, is to take apart an object, and you can learn about its prehistory by looking at the markings and the chips and things on the inside. That's something that's a little bit hard to do if you're working on your own like you are this summer with the asynchronous approach to this class. You're welcome to try it though. Okay, so your first task again is to choose an object. I think the bigger the better, the older the better. With some caveats, you definitely don't want to be taking apart anything that has a cathode ray tube in it or any kind of large moving parts in it like a VCR or a printer. I don't recommend those. But other things like old game consoles that don't work anymore, or even old phones, can also work if you do plan to take them apart. But you don't actually have to take it apart. If you follow along here, I'll tell you a few more things that you can consider as you try to learn about this object. So as we think about electronic devices, I'm generally using 3 terms to think about different phases in its life cycle. So there's the prehistory. That's everything that happened to this object before it came onto my desk here. That's before it was a product, before it was something that I had. And so that can include things like where the materials were mined, where the different components were fabricated, where those different components were assembled together into the final object that you ended up purchasing or someone ended up purchasing. All of that is prehistory, and there are ways you can learn about that prehistory. In some cases you have to just guess, and educated guesses are okay as far as this assignment is concerned, but I want you to be as precise and as confident as possible in each of those prehistorical steps before your object became the object that you know it as now. The other aspect of this that you probably know a lot more about is the lived history of this object that you are going to be studying. So if it's a phone, for example, I don't know about you, I have a box of old phones. I don't know why I'm keeping them, but I know about those, and I could probably think a little bit and tell you when I got each of those phones, when I stopped using that phone. So those are the boundaries of that phone's lived history. And I might remember specific details about the time I dropped it and cracked the screen, the time I got a new cover for it. Those are the time I got a new memory card for it. Those are specific events in the life of that phone that were pretty significant to that phone. I mean, if you were thinking of telling the story from that phone's point of view, that's something that that phone would definitely remember. Things like being dropped, getting a new case, those sorts of things. And then the afterlife. So this is something where this may not have happened yet for your object. It probably hasn't. And so what we're thinking about here are the things that will happen to your object in the future. And this is where we will learn about things like e-waste recycling and kind of the afterlife of those materials, what happens to them after they get recycled. And this is the thing that you're going to try to learn about for your object. It could also include things like archiving and preservation. Like this is an Atari 2600. It actually works as far as I haven't plugged it in for a while, but it worked last time I plugged it in. And so I'm going to keep using this, and I have several Atari 2600s, but I like to use them. I like to plug them in, show students how they work, show my kids how they work. We had this plugged into our TV recently. So these are things that's a different kind of afterlife. So collection, preservation, that's another kind of thing that can be part of its afterlife. So again, those three phases, that's what we're interested in learning about here for the object lesson assignment. The prehistory of an object, the lived history of that object, and the afterlife of that object. And these objects need to be electronic objects. So things that you would plug in or use a battery to power. Okay, so in terms of what we're doing this week and learning about these phases and working towards this, several things you need to be aware of and keeping track of. So I thought this slide would kind of help isolate the different events of the week. So yesterday was Tuesday. I'm recording this on Wednesday. Yesterday you should have played Phone Story and talked about it in Discord. I also wanted you to take a look at an article called Your Phone Was Made by Slaves. You may not have been able to access that though, which you need to be able to access this to complete the assignment, and it is available here in Canvas. So I'll switch to my student view so you can see it. Whenever you are accessing it here in Canvas, you should see this button that says load it in a new window. This is Perusal. We used Perusal a couple weeks ago in week 1. Same system here. Just click this button to open it up. It's a social annotation tool, and I don't want to open it up here, or I can't actually while I'm in student view. But you'll see it there. It's a document. If for some reason Perusal doesn't work, or you'd rather just not do it that way, I guess, you can also access the content. I've got a link to it here. It's no longer on the longreads.com website, but here's a snapshot of it from the Wayback Machine. Actually, I already have it pulled up over here. So it's kind of a long article, but I think it's really engrossing. I think it's a really interesting article. Strongly recommend it. And as you read it, I want you to pay attention to a few things. This is a piece of writing, so he's using storytelling to try to bring us into his point of view and help us understand what he wants us to know about minerals, about conflict minerals, as we call them. And so take a look at this and see if you can pay attention to how he draws you into that story. And he does it in sometimes surprising ways. For example, he starts off talking about tombstones. So what do tombstones have to do with iPhones? That's a question that may prompt some discussion, right? So discuss your answer to that in Perusal or Discord if you would prefer to do it that way. So it looks like the images may not be loading in the archived version, but that's all right. It's mostly the text. So that was actually for yesterday. So if you haven't done that yet, do this first. We're doing these different phases of these objects in chronological order, basically. So start with that one. Okay, so back to my slides. For today, I want you to learn about labor and alleged abuses at Apple's suppliers. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's the main goal to think about today. So it's kind of the next phase of the prehistory. We can think of the prehistory being kind of 2 phases. And so we're going to learn about the next one. Tomorrow we're going to look at e-waste, and then Friday we'll kind of wrap things up and put it all together, basically. Those are the 4 days of this week. Okay, so tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, you will and should start working with a new tool. This being a digital studies class, I do want to introduce you to new tools, and Timeline.js is the tool that you're going to use to complete the object lesson assignment. I'm going to do a separate video for Timeline.js just to show you how it works. It's a little wonky if you've never used it before, but it's actually quite powerful once you kind of get used to it. So I do want to give you a tutorial, explain how to work with it. That's where you will be conveying the findings of your investigation and your reflection as you tell the story of your object. Okay, so again, just kind of reviewing some things. So yesterday, your phone was made by slaves, phone story. Those are the two things that kind of kick us off. And then, of course, the discussing things in Discord is always a good idea. So please do that if you haven't done it yet. So I did make a channel for this. It's called Discuss Phone Story. Take a look at that channel, add your thoughts to it. Also, for Your Phone Was Made by Slaves, it's just a perusal channel for now. I guess I could make a Discord channel, I suppose, but that's the main idea. But you've got a few things questions already raised, or people have made observations about Phone Story in Discord. So after you play the game, respond to those questions or to those comments with your own ideas and see what you can come up with and what we can decide about this game and what we can do based on it. It's a controversial game. I mean, it's something that I do want to give you a bit of a content warning about. Some people do find it disturbing. I mean, that's the point of the game, so I don't want to apologize for that or tell you, not to play it, but it is an interesting game and it challenges some of your assumptions. It's also a kind of gameplay you might not be used to. It is kind of hard, actually. A couple of the levels are kind of hard. There are videos of it on YouTube. I strongly recommend not watching those. I strongly recommend playing it yourself. You do have to figure out how to play it. So I'm not going to be able to walk you through the whole process because different computers will have different things you need to click through to do it. But it's phonestory.org. You can click play online, but actually you can't play it online anymore because of, as you can see with this message, Adobe Flash reached its end of life. Flash is the software that this game was programmed in. Flash no longer works in web browsers. There is a standalone version though, and you can see that there are two links down here. Make sure you download the right one. Extract it. You will probably have to agree to allow that software to run on your computer. So you might get some kind of safety warning from your computer about that, but go ahead and pass that. Trust me, you'll be fine. And then you'll be able to play the game, hopefully. If you can't get that working, you can always ask for help in Discord. I'm always happy to help walk you through whatever the steps are. If you get error messages, take a screenshot, send me that. I can hopefully help explain what's going on. Okay, then again, read Your Phone Was Made by Slaves. It's also, I guess, kind of a disturbing story in some ways, so I guess there's sort of a content warning for that. But let me know what you think by adding your thoughts, annotations, and perusal. And of course, take a look at the object lesson. The object lesson assignment is fairly complex, but that's kind of what I'm talking about for today. So, okay, so to review your tasks for today. So this is Wednesday, so day 2 of week 3. Two things I'd like for you to look at. Well, one to read and one to listen to. So these are episodes of a podcast called This American Life. These are from a few years ago now, but the first one is called Mr. Daisy and the Apple Factory. It's a story told by Mike Daisy about his visit to some Foxconn factories in China, and it's a story about what he found there. It's an interesting story. He's a very compelling storyteller. Tells you some things that you might not have thought about in certain ways, and it's a very affecting, a very emotional story that he tells about some of the people that he met there. So that's one thing I'd like for you to listen to. It's one thing I'd like for you to read because the podcast episode is no longer available to listen to because it has been retracted, and that is the subject of the other podcast. So there's two, episodes 454 and episode 460. So they're linked here in the notes for today. 454, you can read the transcripts, and you should, but you have to listen to this one. So listen to This American Life episode called Retraction. And it is about why this podcast had to retract the previous episode. Pretty intense sometimes when the host Ira Glass confronts Mike Daisy about some things he said that were not true, and it's a pretty compelling piece of audio storytelling on its own. So make sure you listen to that. And there is a transcript that's available for you to read for all the episodes of This American Life. But I really want you to actually go through the process of listening to it, because there's one key moment that only comes through on audio, and it's extremely uncomfortable. And I want you to experience that so you can experience the power of audio storytelling with that. Okay, so those are main learning kind of things to do. Other things to do, all right? So think about using Discord, using your blog to expand and reflect on some of these things. Think about Mike Daisy. As you will learn in the retraction episode, Mike Daisy made up some things. So the question is, does that matter? It matters in a truth sense, certainly, but his argument is that he is still doing good work because he gets people to care, and that's what matters. People caring is what matters. So basically, the question is, do the ends justify the means in this case? And, you know, maybe we'll agree, maybe we'll disagree about that. So those are the main things. The other thing you should start doing, just kind of in the back of your mind, is pick a device. So find a device that you want to work on. If you don't have one yet, go ahead and find it. This is something that should be somewhat older, something that you don't need, something that has a story to tell about it. And if it's an old enough device that you can take it apart safely, then please go ahead and do that. Learn what's inside it. On my live stream yesterday, I did that with the Teddy Ruxpin doll. It turned out to be a lot simpler on the inside than I expected. It's basically a tape player. So I didn't actually get very many interesting internal components. But if you have any kind of game console system, or certainly any kind of smart device, you will probably find something much more interesting than what I found. So pick a device and start working through it. And since we're thinking about the prehistory here, see if you can figure out who the manufacturer is and whether or not they have any records published or investigations that people have done about their labor practices as a company. Are they a good company? Are they done right by their employees? You may be able to find something out about that. Yeah, so these are the things. And if you do find something, let's say you have an Apple device, let's say you're looking at, or I'm looking at an Atari device, I would try to figure out what was Atari doing, like where were these things being made in 1985 when this particular one was made. I can tell you, I know the answer is Hong Kong, but I'm pretty sure anyway it's Hong Kong. Oh no, Taiwan. This one was made in Taiwan. So what was it like in Taiwan in 1985 when this was being made? That's what you're trying to figure out, and what I'm trying to figure out in terms of Atari. At that point, Atari would have been still owned by Warner Brothers, I think, so certainly they would contract out all of the actual manufacturing of their products, but that still could be a place for me to start looking into that backstory. So that's the basic idea. Again, your daily task for today, I'll just kind of go through it one more time. You should be listening, so read episode 454, listen to episode 460 of This American Life, and then discuss some of these questions. There's a channel in Discord set up for this, so make sure you contribute to that. The channel is, I think, just Discuss Mike Daisy. So take a look at that and add your thoughts there. And then pick a device. I will record another video explaining how to actually start recording the information that you found on Timeline.js, and then that will be your big project for the week. All right, so I believe that's it for this video. Let me just go back to the starting slide. Thanks for watching this video. If you have questions, always feel free to ask questions. Use the Discord help channel if you're stuck on something, or if you get error messages with anything you're trying to use or do for this class. That's the best place to get some support. You can also always schedule meetings with me in my office hours. Okay, so that's it. Good luck on the object lesson, and I will see you in the next video.